2 shots of snow, 1 late next week, and then 1 late next weekend. And I want to show you what the setup here is going to look like. So you're going to have this right here. This is a storm system that's going to help usher in the cold air. It's going to move to the north. And then look how far south this 540 line gets. So that's roughly what we use as the rain snow line. Look how far south that gets pushed. It gets pushed all the way down to the Gulf. But you also have this high pressure up here that's in the upper Midwest. And you get clockwise flow around the high pressure. And it's going to help drive that cold air south out of Canada across the central and eastern parts of the country. So then you get the cold air in place. So that's one ingredient. You have cold air now in place. But then you also have this frontal boundary that's going to be draped along the East Coast, extending all the way down into the Gulf. Now, what that's going to do, that's going to add a baroclinic zone. That's going to be fuel for any storm that's able to ride up and along that frontal boundary and up the East Coast, which could potentially, that's setting us up, setting the stage for a potential East Coast snowstorm. Now, there's another thing that we need, and that's the energy. We're going to have energy diving down into the central and eastern parts of the country, but where it goes remains uncertain at this point. But I'm going to show you what the models are showing here. All right, so here is the first storm. This is for late next week. You get this energy diving down into the central portions of the country, and then you get this positively tilted trough, which what you want is you want it to either be more neutral or more negative, and you want it to be a more consolidated piece of energy in order to get a good East Coast snowstorm. What this is showing, it's showing an elongated lobe of energy here. It does get out ahead of the trough, and the trough does gain more of a positive tilt, which would guide the storm up the coast, but it's not going to be a strong storm. And I'm going to show you what it looks like at the surface and what I mean by not going to be a strong storm. But it will, we could work with this, but it's not going to give us one of those blockbuster East Coast snowstorms. This is what it looks like at the surface here. You do get snow all the way from, it looks like, Philly into New York. New York, it's tricky. I could see them going either way, possibly rain or snow, depending on how far. I mean, it doesn't take much of a difference in order to get snow in New York. But right now I could see it going either way. And then into Boston, you would get maybe some rain and then possibly changing over to snow or just all snow. It really depends on the track of the system. But it's not a strong system. But it does ride up the coast, and it does interact with that frontal boundary. But what I want to show you is what it was showing last night. So last night it was showing a decent storm along the coast. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of differences between each model run, especially right now being this far out. But let me show you here. I'm going to show you what it looks like at this. I'm going to start with the surface since I already have that pulled up. Look at that storm. Look at it go up the coast there. And that's a decent snowstorm for all the way from Philly into New York, into Boston, and into Maine. But I'm going to show you what it looks like in the upper air, because the upper air tells you everything you need to know about these storms. Let's see here. Let's look at the 500 millibar map. All right, so here's that energy diving down south. Look at that lobe of energy here. Look at that lobe, and you get more of a neutral tilt, which is what you want. And then it does gain more of a negative tilt, and then you get southerly flow, which will push that low right up the coast there. And look at the difference between the strength of the energy between last night's run and this morning's run. So look at this, and then let's move to this morning's run. It is much weaker on this latest run than it was yesterday. Look at that lobe of energy, and it's more consolidated. That energy is more consolidated, and you get a neutral tilt, and then it starts to turn negative, and it guides that storm up the coast. But what I want to show you now, what the European model is showing, because the European model is a bit different. So here's the European model, and this is this morning's run. This is the most recent run. You get this energy diving down into the U.S., and it's not consolidated. I mean, and here's the trough. You get more of a neutral trough, but then you have this piece of energy here coming in behind it, and that is going to push this thing offshore here, just like that. I want to show you what it looks like at the surface, but it stays offshore. It does not hug the coast like the GFS is showing. I want to show you right here, and this is for late this coming week. This is around the 15th and 16th of next week. So I'm going to show you here what it looks like at the surface, and there's our low pressure, but it stays off the coast. And that, again, is due to the trough orientation. So it's going to be a positively tilted trough, and the energy is not nearly as consolidated as what the GFS is showing. And this energy coming in behind it helps to push this thing right offshore, and the snow stays offshore. You don't get an East Coast snowstorm out of that. But I want to show you one last thing here before we go, because this is the second shot of potential snow along the East Coast. Now, this is the second shot of snow along the East Coast. And this is the energy that we're going to be dealing with. It's going to dive into the U.S. But the thing I don't like about this is it's a positively tilted trough, and it's not super consolidated in terms of energy. I mean, you get this strung out piece of energy here. So you're going to get a wider shield of precipitation, but you're not going to have a consolidated storm. And I want to show you what it looks like at the surface, because this does push it out to sea, but you do get some snow out of it. But this is our second chance. If you can get this energy, get out ahead of the main trough and be guided up the coast along that frontal boundary, East Coast snowstorm, it's game on. Let me show you what it looks like at the surface. It doesn't really show anything all that impressive at this point, but the main point is there are 2 shots of snow, and that's going to be late next week and then also late next weekend. So if anything changes, I will keep you guys updated. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and go Bills.